So this is about a 15-minute tour, and we're going to do it with pictures and voice and me as your tour guide. So welcome aboard the bus, so to speak, and let's take off. So what I'm going to do is first explain how I got such a big relationship with Sri Lanka, and I first went there in the mid-80s, the early 80s, but since 2000 we've been going there regularly, at least once a year. With a group of us here from Byron Bay in Australia, we purchased some land to make a yoga retreat on the very far south coast at this place here, Talala Beach. Now it's still going, Talala. And Talala Retreat, and if you're heading to Sri Lanka, I really highly recommend it. It's a fantastic place, but I don't have anything to do with this property anymore. I'm next door, but I visit there and stay there quite a lot. I love it. So during that time, we used to always spend a lunch or a dinner going to this place nearby called Claughton House, and it was shut at the time because there was absolutely no tourism. The Civil War was still in place, and it was very hard to very little tourism. But we used to go and have lunch at this fantastic place called Claughton House, and every time as I was sitting on the deck on the veranda eating fish curry and having a beer, I would look at this fantastic view and just fell in love with the architecture. And gradually I became more and more enamored with the idea of finding out more about this architect, Geoffrey Bower. And since then, every time I've been back, I get to see more and more of his work. And since I've been running the Best of Sri Lanka tours, I've decided I really want to take people on the road to see the work of Geoffrey Bower. And it all started here at this fantastic five villa property at the south coast of Sri Lanka. So the tour starts in Colombo. We all meet in the capital. We will then spend 2 days in Colombo visiting the properties that Geoffrey Bower had a relationship with in the early days, and this is one of them. It's called the Gallery on Paradise Road, and the Gallery was originally Bower's workshop and studio, where he had a whole team of architects and draftspeople and staff, as he was very prolific. And it's now a really well-functioning and beautiful restaurant, and we'll eat there, and we'll also visit his home, which is called Number 11 Colombo, which has turned into left exactly how it was left when Bower died in 2003, and his all his furniture and work and artworks, and even his old Rolls Royce is still there in these 4 terraces that he purchased and gradually took over and expanded on over the years. And every time you visit as a group, there's a small documentary we can see about Bower and his life's work. In the early 70s, Geoffrey Bower was engaged by the Sri Lankan Tourist Commission to design a tourism destination just south of Colombo in a place called Bentoda. And there was going to be 5 hotels built, and Bower also had to design the railway station, because the idea was that a very sedate form of tourism in those days before mass air travel. You would arrive by train, your porter would then come and get you and your bags, and you would be able to amble quite leisurely to one of the 5 hotels that Bower also was in charge of. So we'll be staying at one of these hotels, if not the Avani or the villas. We will then see one of the earlier hotels that was built on the beach as part of this venture. But of course now things have changed a lot as far as tourism goes, and Bentoda is not the major destination that it was in the early days. But we will get a chance to look and observe at some of the architecture that Bauer was responsible for beach hotels. Also, just near Bentota is a place called Lunaganga, which is also one of the major tourism destinations for enthusiasts of Geoffrey Bauer, of which there are a few. And Lunaganga was Bauer's weekend retreat, and he was mainly purchased this land, an old cinnamon grove, in the 60s in order to do a major transformation of a garden. He was really involved in doing a major garden, which was his interest at the time, but he realized that he did not have the skills. He's a practicing lawyer at this time. He decided he wanted to go back to school in London and study architecture because that became his passion. And working your way through Lunaganga, you really see he used it with all the dwellings and buildings as a test run and a trial process for working with the processes and style and vision that he was to implement in a lot of the other work around the world. It's a beautiful place to visit. We'll spend an hour or two walking the gardens and looking at the structures, and throughout the gardens is lots of artwork. A lot of it is by his friend, Donald Friend, Australian artist Donald Friend, who stayed there a lot. Galle is one of my most favourite towns in the whole world. It was first settled by the Portuguese in the late 1500s, then by the Dutch, and then the British after that, up until independence in the late 1940s. It's a really fascinating place. We stay at the Lighthouse Hotel, which is just outside the fort walls. It's one of Bauer's most famous and successful builds. It has sweeping ocean views from all of the rooms, and I think one of the best buffets in the whole world. But we need to keep time to explore the fabulous town of Galle. It's got fascinating history and architecture as well. Many of these old warehouses are now being renovated into guest houses, restaurants and shops. It's a really interesting place. We also take a morning to drive down the coast a bit further and visit Claughton House. I love to take my guests there whenever I'm on tour there because it's always a great experience. But now with this tour specifically for Bauer, it's a must-see. Also bringing swimmers on this trip because we visit Hirikatia, which I think is one of the most beautiful beaches in the whole world. It's a classic crescent-shaped palm, beautiful blue water. It's a great place to visit. Lots of people ask why Sri Lanka is such a high demand tourist destination, and it's very easy to explain. You only have to drive like 2 hours and there's some other fantastic event or ruin or activity or location to see. It's just kind of a small island, but it's just jam-packed with fascinating things. Also, it's got beaches and highlands, so you've got this very multitude of different temperate zones and tropical areas. So it's a small island with lots of variety. So always something to see. Now on this next day is usually on my trips I usually only like to drive a few hours to see something new, but on this trip it's quite a long road to get from Galle back up to Kandy. It's about 5 hours, which is not a huge thing for in the West, but on third wheel roads it's a bit of a haul. But we get there in Kandy at night in time to visit the Buddha's Tooth Temple and see the 6 o'clock ceremony, which is a real interesting event to experience. Gautama Buddha's tooth is kept at this fantastic temple for safekeeping. After an overnight rest in Kandy, it's just another 2.5 hours to our next stop, which is Dambulla. Dambulla is in the centre of the Cultural Triangle, and there's lots of things to do there, as well as seeing the Heritage Candelama. There's the Buddha rock caves, and there's very good spas. There's the elephant reserve at Minaria. Then it's back down the hill to the coast. We stay at a Bauer-designed beach hotel called Negombo Blue and rest up before our flight's out. So that's the tour, the virtual tour. I hope you enjoyed it. The real tour is 10 days, 10 nights, 11 days. And we'll hopefully get to do it as soon as travel becomes permissible again, probably next year. So hope to talk to you about it. But before finishing my talk about the architecture of Geoffrey Bower, there's two more properties that I haven't yet seen myself. I'm a bit like one of those bird watchers that has got, you know, a list of 300 or so birds on the bucket list of birds to see before they die. Well, I've got the same thing looking at the architecture of Geoffrey Bower. And the first one is this property, which is on my bucket list, which is the Ina da Silva House. The Ina da Silva House was originally in central Colombo. It was one of Bower's earliest works in the 60s. It really represents the look he was after, and it runs through all his later work. The polished concrete floors, white walls, teak or coconut wood columns, and red terracotta roof tiles. This was the start of Bower's developing his own style, which later became known as tropical modernism, which has now been exported around the world. And we love it here on the east coast of Australia, the Caribbean, Bali. Tropical places have really adapted Bower's tropical modern style, and I think he's gone unrecognised as the innovator of this particular look. The house was dismantled piece by piece and moved from central Colombo and was reassembled in the grounds of Lunaganga. Each time I've been there, unfortunately, I haven't been able to visit it because it's been booked, usually by Japanese people, because Japanese, they just love Bower. So one day, I hope we can visit, hopefully on this trip. The other house I wanted to show you and talk about was the Jayadeen House. This house is on a cliff overlooking the coast at Marissa. The land has been owned by the Jayawardene family for many generations. Jayawardene was a prime minister, and the writer Michael Ondaatje is a cousin and has stayed here often. When the original house burnt down in the 70s, the grandson, Pradeep, commissioned Bower, who asked him what his brief was. He said, "My perfect house would be a garden." So Bower used this site, and as you can see, made it completely open plan, and a lot of it is open to the elements. It's still in family hands, and I haven't been to see it, but it's another one I hope to see. So if you want to know more about the Geoffrey Bower tour, or anything to do with Best of Sri Lanka Tours, please visit the website. The contact is in the screen below, the website, and don't be shy about contacting me at any time if you have any questions. As they say in Sri Lanka, Ayabawan, and I hope to see you there. Bye.